shout out to Charles Dupes, because he actually reached out to me. Like I always say, if you're watching this and you have a good list or it's a result, even if you have just your best result, you can reach out to me, let me know stuff. You never know if I'll cover the list. Ultimately, I like to hear the results anyway, so make sure you guys feel free to reach out to me like he did. But then it actually made it known that this actually happened. He was able to get some notes from him, so we're gonna have some first hand accounts from this get as for how it went, his matchups, the missions, and some thoughts. And of course, we're going to have some thoughts because there are some new tech here, like I've been alluding to. So let's see. We have, starting off, it's the War Horde. So he went 4-0-1. He did draw, and the draw was in the middle. So this 5-round event, so it's third round. So let's take a look at his list. We have a beast boss with Cunning but Brutal, a Big Mech with Drilla and the Tractor Blaster with the enhancement of Follow Me Lads for the wombo combo of Gas plus the Big Mech, and then here we go. So you're hoofing it downfield, minimum 14-inch shuffling. It's fantastic. Then we go to Mozrog Skragbad. So there are no pigs. He is not leading anything. This is fully solo Mozrog. Yeah. That was another thing that got me excited. Solo Maz. Now he does have some thoughts about that. We're going to talk about his MVP units. We're going to talk about what he would change and such. But just so I don't forget and overlook it, he did say that he did, think Maz was relatively decent. Like we all think, is that he could have done better and he's still a little too much for his points. Yet for his cost and what he was doing, there's nothing right there that he finds like a good trade out just yet. So if you're already wondering, yeah, Maz does perform at this event enough that he didn't hate him and he didn't throw the games with him, but yeah, he was kind of still in the chopping block. He had a good time with Maz. Absolutely love to see it. He loved the 4-up invuln that he has and just a threat, right? The opponent has to allocate resources to him. Maz is kind of relatively small and durable in his own way. So happy to see Maz get on the field and actually get on the performing list. Then we have Zodgrod Wartsnagga. So people still sleep on Zod. It's okay. I understand a little finicky to use super grass, but very, very efficient alongside gas. So as you can see, we're looking at 3 mobs on this list already. So we have 20 Snaggas to go with the Beast Boss and Cunning but Brutal. We have 20 boys to go with Gazgul Thraka. And then we have Zodgrod Wartsnagga and his Super Gretchen. So that's 3 individual mobs with their own utility. So then we move to a single truck with 5 flash kits and a unit of tank busters in there with the shock attack. So he does have some Daka support here, and this is going into that one truck. He then has 2 individual minimum sized unit of Gretchen, 1 hunter rig because he couldn't afford a battle wagon. So he says the hunter rig, it just doesn't enough. So the 20-man unit of boys is safe at least for 1 turn, and it doesn't get popped so easily. People sleep on this. 135 points, it does act as good, decent bait. So really happy to see that. Just find another cool unit to get on the list. Always play what you guys got, right? Don't always try to stick to what people are known as meta, because as you see, this stuff just breaks out sometimes over weekends, and it's really just people making stuff work the way they outside the box. Be innovating with orcs, so you have a deep codec. So I like that we still brought the hunter rig off the shelf, dusted it off. So that was just for shuffling around the 20 Snagga boys. He had 10 commandos, which he absolutely loved having those 10 commandos. They were very important to him. 2 5-man units of storm boys, and then 1 warbiker unit. So he loved that. He had a storm boy unit for scoring, but for skirmishing as well. The warbiker was for skirmishing. The mandos were able to split up, take up space, deny reserve space, and then maybe even skirmish once in a while too. And then the flash kit. So those were his skirmishing units / scoring units, while these 3 mobs were moving forward based off how he moved it. Now keep in mind, so on the wall turn, you have Zod being extremely fast, Gaz being extremely fast, and then the Beast Snagga boys and the Snaggas being relatively fast when they disembark, But on top of that, the Snagga boys have a different profile. They have great access, great utility by getting 5+, critical 5+. So then they'll have sustained lethal 5+ on that turn from gas. So they're a very devastating punching unit, unlike another unit of boys, which, like we've talked about in the past, you have another unit of 20 boys, you're paying for 2 characters generally to try to be even close to efficient as 20 Snaggas, and it costs more. So in this case, he just pays for that. So you have another unit that's devastating for the 5+ crit, devastating for Makari's ability to take advantage of it, and then it has Cunning but Brutal. That means this unit can fall back and charge, which definitely does come up in this event as he talks about it, and that's just so much threat overload for the enemy to deal with. They have to deal with Gaz, they have to deal with Zod, because usually Zod's so far in their deployment zone that they're trying to allocate getting rid of him too off objective. But then you have Snaggas that still, if somehow people can get damage on him or touch him, then they're going to just fall back and start charging throughout the rest of the game. So that is devastating, and that does come up. And I've absolutely loved that triple mob threat with their own utility built in there as well. So imagine the speed, the staging, threat overload, and Kratos. As for so let's go into his actual path to victory, his matchups, and then we'll go over some of his notes. Yeah. But let's see. We said Blood Moon's Murder with $10 super chat. Whoa! Thank you very much. Super supportive. He said the fact more DACA and a hunt did well lately that had a path of victory is still possible. Glad the Ulcer nightmare is over. So yeah, people still make stuff work. You know, Mark Perry is unique in his own way, but he did have to mess with that detachment for a while. That just means that sure, you're not gonna, maybe qualify for worlds with a odd more DACA list, but you can win your local events, you can win your crusades, you can win against your local friends. You can do all those things if you just put your squig juice brain to the shroom cap gray wall, right? Gray green, and you can actually come up with ideas and innovate, and we're here to help you kind of do that. So thank you very much, Murder. And yeah, my eye is doing better. I can actually so thank you. Yeah, guys. So it's exciting because I know I got excited to see a bunch of rigs, and I'm excited to see 20-man snagga mobs, which have been amazing alongside Gas since Index Hammer. But now I feel like it's an absolutely great time to be using them. So let's look at his path to victory. So this was a relatively small event. I think it was like 40 people, but still, I actually enjoyed his list, and I wanted to go over everything. So let's go to his first matchup. Let's show his enemy, and then I'll just talk about the notes that he had real quick. So this one was against Adeptus Mechanicus. He had Cohort Cybernetica. This is Belisario's Call, double Data Smiths, and then a Tech Priest, followed by a Techno Archaeologist. Double Rangers, followed by these big bricks of Castle and Robot. Now, he did say that the robots were threatening because he didn't really deal with their Overwatch because they had double flame. They all had flamers on them, but the opponent was so worried about the speed of Gaz and Zod that he kind of stayed back. Now, keep in mind, I should have said this earlier, but this was Mission J, which is Lich Pin, Search and Destroy, and it was layout 3. So, of course, the opponent had to be very scared, right? Because Gaz, if he goes first, can just run them down. He got infiltrators to take that space. So he deployed them kind of far back, and ultimately, our friend here did actually get to his robots with Zodgrod to tar pit them to stop them from being able to overwatch Gaz unit. So great job there. Then we have one unit of the Sky Stalkers, followed by some Cerberus Raiders. These guys are super annoying with their scout, right? So that's why sometimes Mandos could be cool because they can stop something like this stupid unit from getting in your deployment zone and move blocking some of your big units. Then we have Sakaran Infiltrators, followed by Scorpius Disintegrators, 3 of those. One of these has a chance, like there's a chance he can kill a Hunter Rig, for example, but it's not reliable, right? I mean, unless he like oats it with Belisarius Cole and gets, I mean, it's just not reliable, which is the beauty of the Hunter Rig compared to like, even though, of course, the capacity, but for the cost, right? The cost is great. Of course, we know Battle Wagon will tank it, but the enemy will kind of bait to that. Nonetheless, how this one goes is kind of what I alluded to earlier, right? So how I alluded to earlier was game 1, the AdMech player knew what was going on. He staged kind of pretty far back. He ended up sending Zod turn 1 to tar pit the robots, which meant on turn 2 he wad and full send and ended up in his enemy's deployment zone and just kept them there the whole game. Very quick, very clean. We love when matchups go that way, especially early into an event. So great job there. But then we go into his second matchup, which I do have that one right here. So this was going into Chaos Knights. So in this one, he told me the mission as well. He gets through the first 2 games quick. So he was going mission Q, supply drop, sweeping engagement on layout 3. He said it was a little weird. There was a weird shooting lane. So he had to be somewhat conservative because of the shooting knight. So he had 1 Lancer, a Knight Distractor. I don't know. I guess I can't read right now. 1 Knight Tyrant, which is the one like he said he had to be worried about for the shooting. He just called him Shooting Knight. He had a Brigand, a Carnivore, double Stalkers, and then double Beast of Nurgles. Double Nurglings with 1 Beast of Nurgle, and then a Sloppy Bile Pipe. Did he have Plague? Okay, for some reason I thought he had Plague Bears, but I guess not. So for how this one went is, you can see how Gaz would be devastating in this, and Knights do have to cooperate and kind of fight you at some point. But he did have shooting, and because it was layout 3, there was some good shooting lanes. He said he had to be conservative, but ultimately he sent his Hunter Rig forward towards the center objective just to start getting stuff going. And he thought maybe the big Shooting Knight would shoot him and try to pop it, but instead the Shooting Knight popped the truck and the one with the tank buses and the flash gets, all the guys that were inside the truck got out, they were safe. And then he ended up charging the rig with a small carnivore, which meant in response, our get heroic with Zodgrod to kind of hold the carnivore there so that after the hunter rig got destroyed, that the unit couldn't be piled into and start punched, as well. So because I think he let's see. Oh, and then he also used the other big knight. So that's what it was. It was a carnivore and his other big knight. So which one was it? I think this one right here. I think it was a knight distractor, right? So he heroic to stop the knights from being able to, get into his 20-man unit that was disembarking. So great job of using the heroic to stop the enemy's second unit from piling into your boys, right? So what the enemy was trying to do was charge it with 2 knights, pop it, and then have the other knight pile into the 20-man unit to snag us, get the initiative, and try to kill half the unit. Instead, he heroic with Zodgrod, held that unit there, made him kill it, and then in response, he just was like, okay, it doesn't really matter in this case. Even if your unit consolidates, because then the enemy knight can still consolidate into the 20 snaggas, because he had cunning but brutal, it meant that his 20 snagga boys were able to fall back following turn and still crack him and just destroy him. In response, once that little shenanigans happened, he just declared a wall next turn because there was big knights there. Gaz made it all the way downfield to make contact with his shooting big knight and then cleaned up half his army on that turn. So nice and clean, direct, good use of heroic interventions there. One of the most underutilized stratagems for orcs, in my opinion, right? Somewhere along, I think Rapid Ingress is now, orcs have definitely caught on to it. So I'm going to say now, I think the most underutilized stratagem for orcs is heroic from the orc community, if I had to guess, which makes sense because we're not that durable. So it's not like you want to heroic with everything. We don't get a lot of fallbacks, right? But in this case, love cutting. Did my screen just disappear? Did momentarily. So let's move to his third game. This is where we start getting spicy. This is where he takes his draw. So in this case, he was playing, make sure I get this right. Yep. In this game, he was playing Mission K, Scorched Earth, Search and Destroy Layout 3. So if you look at this one, I don't have the brought up right now. If you look at how Layout 3 is if you're Search and Destroy, that means if you're fast, you can cut angles and shoot. And that's exactly what happened here. So we'll talk about the list, and then we'll tell you how devastating his turn 1 was. The tile just took a huge chunk of flesh off. So we have an Ethereal followed by a Strike Team, double Devilfish, 1 Ghost Keel, a Hammerhead Gunship, a Pathfinder unit, another Pathfinder unit, another Pathfinder unit, 1 Piranha, Triptide, so triple Riptide battle suits, 1 Skyray gunship, and then 2 units of stealth suits, followed by 1 WAAAGH. So how this went is, of course, and this is funny because we talked about this when we did Tom Godfrey out in the UKTC, and our gets out here when talking to even Steven and everybody like that. Tau right now are cooking, right? They got a lot of units, a lot of shooting, a lot of tanks, a lot of scouting, infiltrate, mobility. GW favorite shooting terrain big time right now. So a lot of orc players have been dealing with the same thing. So be on the lookout, kids, if you're playing Tau for this right now. But what ended up happening here is that the opponent was able to scout his Devilfish, and then the Pathfinders get him right in front of him. I think they have an auto 6 advance as well, and they can get out and shoot because of Devilfish data shade ability. So he said ultimately what happened was the Tau player killed 7 of his units on the top of turn 1. So he killed his Hunter rig, his Mandos that were combat squatted, a truck, the flash kits, the tank busters, the shock attack gun, and they killed all of the boys in Gaz's unit, but only kept Gaz and the Big Mac alive because of Artisan. Crazy, right? And that's what's been happening to a lot of gets we've been hearing about. But that doesn't mean the game's over. That doesn't mean you concede. And that's what he said. He said, well, at one point I almost considered like conceding, right? He was like, dude, I lost so much stuff for turn 1. I was like, maybe I concede. But let us remember what I said. This is Scorched Earth. So he said, my opponent, my roommate's not ready yet. I'm just going to keep playing. Let's get stuck in. So he kept playing. And he said ultimately, by the end of it, Zod, Maz were able to hold along alongside Gaz and to keep it to a tie. Because it was Scorched Earth, he was still continually able to store 10s every turn and was still scoring some secondaries. Ultimately, by the end of it, he had also burnt an objective just like his opponent and somehow came up even at the end with secondary. So because of Scorched Earth, because he kept playing the mission, and because he had solo Maz, right? He gave Maz credit there, saying Maz was holding the line, cutting down stuff, taking saves, Zod running up the field, flipping objectives, getting secondary, stuff like that. He was able to still continue to hold on to this and come through with a draw after you losing 7 units units on turn 1. So that's actually how he ends his day 1. He ends with the draw. He ends up taking that draw. Let's see, we had it 85. So if you guys can see over here, he had an 85, 89 going into that. Oop, make sure I take these out because I don't need to have all this stuff. So then we go into his day. So day 2, he starts off with his game going into Leagues of Votann. So this day on day 2, they're playing layout 8. So let's go into his opponent on that, which is Leagues of Votann. It's Hammers of Ragnar, whatever they're called. Okay, so we have Iron Master, a strategist, and then Uthar, followed by 3 Big 10 units of the Zerker. So keep in mind, Zerkers have the fight on death. You have to roll for it, so it's like a 4 up. And then this mole launcher usually hits on 6s. It's indirect, but it can make you slow on like a 4+, like a squid dog. So pretty effective unit. They have good punching, really cheap for what they do. So kind of like the backbone of Leagues of Votann right now. Then we have the warrior unit, the combat squad. We have this new carrier, which is like they took over there where they're Sagittars, even cheaper, but they have a Sagittar as well. So then we have 2 units of Budokir Thunderkin of 3-man units, followed by 2 fortresses, a pine, and then 2 units of pioneers and a Jaeger. So he brought a good amount of vehicles, and then most of his infantry are these big thick boy berserkers, right? They're feeling no pains. Do they still feel no pains? They still do. As for what he said, this one was pretty cool. And he said, well, I didn't know. I knew that the berserker for me issue because they're fight on death, and I knew the opponent had a little bit more shooting than me than I liked, and I didn't really want to deal with that. So he said, I made the risky play. I called the turn 1 WAAAGH. Since he was going second, as in the Ork player, our friend here, he actually was able to see that the Leagues of Votann player was kind of disrespectful and just kind of moved out into midfield. It's not necessarily he's being disrespectful. I'm kind of joking. Leagues of Votann are notoriously slow, so they have to move up. And how they play is they essentially make a line with all their stuff and say, come get it. We're kind of tough. We're not that fast. And, fight back and try to dig you off us. But what happened here was, I went through this. What's happened here was that he made the WAAAGH, turn 1. He got Zod so far up the field that he ended up charging his bikers, picking them up, consolidating, and making a huge wall between the enemy's most efficient combat unit and Gaz, right? So essentially, because Zod went out first in front of Gaz and made charges, and then Gaz followed up and made charges, that once Zod piled in, made his big charge, piled in, consolidated, and moved across the field, he made a big, almost like umbrella in front of the Gaz unit, which meant these berserkers had to go into the Zod unit. And in response, he only killed 6 of them because, from what I remember, these guys hit on 4s generally, from what I remember. So he only killed about 6 of Zod's units because Zod's always -1 to wound. And then they had the 5 up info. And in response, his Zod unit ended up, and Zod with Zod alongside them, ended up killing the entire berserker unit, right? Because you're still standing within Gaz's lethal aura, you're still getting 5+ sustain, you're still if for some reason he popped critical 5+, you're able to do that. And it's just a bunch of dumb volume of punches, and he just rolled poorly and just died. So he ended up killing some of those guys as well. And from that point, because he still had Gaz pretty much mostly intact and he had taken up the mid table, he just continued to charge down this player's throat and got 100 points in his game 5, 74. So then we move into his game 5. So Charles is doing a great job right now. And then he goes into Chaos Demons. So here we have the quadruple birds. So it's 4 birds and the Bellicor. So he's going into Tantalizing Legion. So this was Mission M, Purge the Foe, Crucible of Battle, and Layout 8 as well. So he said he never played against the birds or the demons at all. So he was like, I don't even understand what's happening here. So we have the Tantalizing oh my god. Scintillating Legion. God, I can't even say it. Scintillating. I've played against this and it's so funny. I can't say the name now. Bellicor, Fate Weaver, and then Triple Order Change. These are just big bird demons with good shooting. They have flat 3 damage, they have 10, yada yada yada. And then Bellicor stops them from getting shot. And then the detachment itself gives them buffs. They can get like sustained D3 and then or something. And then they can be picked up if you touch them and kind of like redeploy and a bunch of little shenanigans. It's funny because the detachment also gives you like these tokens so you can act as kind of like apps as a CP reroll for certain stuff. So that's pretty fun. He has a unit of 10 Plague Bearers, a Beast of Nurgle, double Flamers, and then double Screamers. That's the entirety of the list, because the issue, the whole point of this list is that these guys have capability indirect, the name guy can, and then all of them have, you know, good shooting, strength, and they can get up to decent volume with the sustain access, and then Be'lakor can't shoot them back. So it's good into like elite infantry and stuff, but orcs love running down this kind of army. So that's kind of what happens here. So he says, I never played into that, but ultimately I understood what the enemy could do, so I hit Gaz's unit back, scared about his puppet master shooting. And on the big go turn, he made contact with Gaz into Be'lakor. He was tried to, excuse me. He tried to make contact with Gaz and Be'lakor, but he re-rolled his advance into a 1, and instead he went to Beast of Nurgle. But he said that had ended up working out because he was able to slingshot into his wall of Plague Bearers, instead pile into them and pile into the Lord of Change, which is in his deployment zone. He said Zod went and stole his enemy's home objective, and while the Beast boss 20-man unit of Snagas was able to kill Kairos and injure Be'lakor greatly. In response, because the enemy has to do damage by association, and it has to by association, right? By multiple units. Sorry, it's a collective, right? And then his one bird can definitely not wipe out 20 Snagaboys. And even though you touch them, they can be picked up, and I think they can shoot you in combat, so they can get around being touched. But the issue is they still have to focus. So in this response, he just focused on Gaz's unit and wasn't able to kill Zod, who just kept his primary down. And at that point, he started to run away with the score. So the enemy conceded all the mid table. And so he took that concession of the table and just stuck all the boys in his face and said, even if I can't kill you, I'm going to touch my stuff, and I can kill your little stuff that's going to be used for scoring and not allow you to play the mission. Gotta love having 20 Snagas and Gaz and Zod when you go into Greater Demons, because you can run them down, you can blend them up with lethals, and then kind of just stay on their face and artist nails, fight on death, whatever you got to do in response. So awesome win there. He ended up getting a 86 point there for getting second overall. So shout out to Charles, and thank you for sending this. I love the list. I love to see a Hunter Rig. I love to see a Moz. To some degree, right? Other players might look at this and say, well, you know, let's say that you showed this list on like a Discord or a Reddit or a Facebook or whatever, your friends. You know, there's something to say that someone would tell you, even I might say, right? Is, well, Moz is maybe a little fat that can be cut, right? Or the Hunter Rig can be upgraded to a battle wagon if you just simply cut Moz, right? There's little concessions there that people could say, you know, you might want to not I would say the difference is what I'm trying to point out here is that what people would tell you to do, and Charles didn't do that. He just went with what he wanted to do, the list that he favored, the units that he favored, the combos that he felt strong with, and he still ran through with this and had an excellent result, right? So the point here is that even though someone might tell you on social media or what you see from some of these videos is, well, Maz and Hunter rigs aren't efficient enough. They're not good units. Can't use them. If they're on your list, you're not being competitive. You're already casual. That's simply not true. That's simply not true, and that's something we always try to show here. So some thoughts from Charles, by the way, on his MVP units and stuff to close this out was he said Zod was indispensable, and he played a pivotal role in every game when it came to threatening or stealing their home objective. He said the Beast Snaggle Boss Brick was super important with Cunning but Brutal when it came to killing stuff like a Hammerhead, a Riptide, a Kairos. It was a really, really big deal. He said, of course, the Big Mac and Gaz are a huge unit when it comes to killing, but ultimately it's the amount of attention they take, right? The fact that the enemy has to revolve their entire deployment and game plan around this one unit means that they're going to concede a lot of the table. Then you're stacking that alongside a Zod and a Snaggaboy brick where it's like, well, you have to concede all of that space, which is crazy. And that's what kind of ended up happening sometime. He said there was something big to say about the fact that he was using 20-man units of Snagas as well instead of 2x10. He said that he agreed with the advice that sometimes you just need the big brick to soak Overwatch, for it to have some emergency disembarks, have some random wounds to be able to survive being punched by something tough. The 10-man was more of a skirmish piece, but that's not why he's bringing the Snagas and the boss. He said, I'm bringing the Snagas and the boss to eat greater demons, meters, and other big tough things like Catans. So he said typically he doesn't even play War Horde, he's playing Bully Boys, but for this they weren't using the buffs good enough, and that's why he moved into this. He also had some thoughts about the Sakatek gun and the Tank Busters. He said they did pop off and kill, the Land Fortress, and they did were able to finish and hurt some greater demons and finish off some greater demons once they closed the distance. So he did not think about changing them. As I said, the one thing he did think about changing was Mog, but ultimately nothing is good enough trade for him. So really, he didn't say anything that was what he was trying to get rid of. That just, maybe if he wanted a wagon, it could do the same thing as a hunter rig, but the cost of it was fantastic and that it was worth it. So ultimately, not too much changing on this list. Great job, Charles. Thank you for this. And I think a lot of people could be inspired by this. A lot of people have 20 snegas, you're running gas. People have been sleeping on rigs or whatever. You can sleep a Moz off there. He kind of acts like a demon prince. He's not a lone op and he can't fly and he's not, as good reliably, but he's still cool for what Orcs got. And I'm glad that he still had fun bringing him. So thank you for that, Charles. Shout out to our sponsors, the Baron of Dice, as they helped us do our wall tactic dice. So shout them out. Check them out in the description, 5% off in the discount because nobody likes taxes. And shout out to Baron of Dice. They allow us to do our paint competition. So thank you very much to them. If you enjoyed the clip, check out the full video here. If you'd like to see more tactics, click here.
Let's get stuck in, lads!